Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hello, and thanks for joining us. Today, we're stepping into a story that's going to take us on a wild ride through the heart of Enugu, a city in Nigeria where the everyday meets the extraordinary. This isn't your typical tale. It's a mix of hard work, unexpected generosity, and a mystery that'll keep you guessing until the very end. At the center of it all is a woman named Oni, a caterer whose life was forever changed by a single gift. Picture this: a bustling city, a woman chasing her dreams one meal at a time, and a car that carried a secret darker than the night itself. Let's start with Enugu itself. If you've never been there, imagine a place where the air hums with life. The streets are alive with the roar of okadas, those motorcycle taxis darting through traffic, and the chatter of traders haggling over baskets of tomatoes and okra in the markets. The city sits on hills, its skyline a blend of modern buildings and old colonial relics, with coal dust lingering in the breeze, a nod to its past as the coal city. By day, it's busy, but peaceful, the kind of place where neighbors wave from porches and kids chase each other down narrow lanes. But when the sun dips below the horizon, Enugu takes on a quieter tone, a stillness that hints at stories waiting to be told. And that's where Oni's story begins, a tale that starts with flour-dusted hands and ends with a truth that shook the city to its core. Oni lived on the outskirts of Enugu, in a modest home that was more function than flair. It was a small, concrete block of a house, its tin roof rattling when the rains came, its walls weathered by years of sun and wind. Inside, there was a single bedroom with a thin mattress and a wooden stool, a tiny sitting area with a worn chair, and a kitchen that was the heartbeat of her existence. That kitchen wasn't much to look at. A gas stove propped on a rickety stand, a sink with a chipped edge, a counter cluttered with jars of spices. But to Oni, it was everything. Step in on any given day, and you'd see her at work. A pot of stew simmering, the sharp scent of onions cutting through the air, the rhythmic thud of a pestle against yam in a mortar. The walls bore the scars of her craft, stains from splashed oil, smudges from smoky fires, but she didn't mind. This was her space, her sanctuary, where she turned raw ingredients into magic. Cooking was in her blood. She'd grown up watching her mother in their village, a woman who could stretch a handful of beans into a feast for 10. Oni would sit by the fire as a child, legs crossed on the dirt, mesmerized by the way her mother's hands moved, stirring, seasoning, tasting. Food isn't just to fill the belly, her mother would say, her voice soft but firm. It's to warm the heart, to bring people close. Oni soaked up those words, carrying them with her when she moved to Enugu as a young woman. She started, small, cooking for a neighbor's christening, then a cousin's wedding. People noticed. "Who made this stew?" they'd ask, spooning more onto their plates. "Oni," someone would answer, and her name began to spread. Before long, she was catering everything: birthdays, funerals, church gatherings, her reputation growing with every satisfied customer. She wasn't flashy about it. Oni didn't have a big sign or a fancy logo, just her skill and a phone number scribbled on bits of paper she handed out. Her clients loved her for more than the food, though. It was the way she'd show up with a smile even after a long day, the way she'd ask about their kids or their health as she set out trays. She had a warmth that made people feel seen, and that kept them calling her back. A wedding needed her jollof rice, spiced with just the right kick of pepper. A funeral called for her egusi soup, thick and comforting, served with mounds of pounded yam. A child's party demanded her chin-chin, crunchy little bites that disappeared as fast as she could make them. Oni poured her soul into every order, and it showed. But that soul came with a price. She worked alone, no assistants to lighten the load, no fancy tools to speed things up. Her days started before dawn, the sky still a deep purple as she shuffled into the kitchen. She'd light the stove, the flame casting shadows on the walls, and begin. chopping vegetables, grinding spices, rinsing rice. The hours blurred together, her hands moving on instinct as the sun climbed higher. By mid-morning, she'd have trays stacked high, coolers filled with drinks, bags stuffed with spoons and napkins. It was a one-woman operation, and she ran it with a precision born of necessity. She'd taste everything, adjusting flavors until, they sang, too much salt ruined a dish, too little left it flat. Her clients expected excellence, and Oni never let them down. The hardest part, though, wasn't the cooking. It was the delivery. Enugu wasn't a compact village where everything was a short walk away. It was a city that sprawled across hills, its roads a maze of asphalt and dirt, its neighborhoods scattered far and wide. For Oni, who didn't own a car, getting her food to clients was a daily test of endurance. Imagine her standing at a bus stop on a sweltering afternoon, the heat pressing down like a weight. She'd have trays balanced in her arms, foil crinkling, as she shifted her grip, a cooler slung over one shoulder, a bag of utensils dangling from the other. Sweat would bead on her forehead, trickling into her eyes, but she'd stand there, waiting for a bus that might already be packed to the brim. When one finally rolled up, she'd climb aboard, squeezing into a space barely big enough for her and her load. The bus would lurch forward, rocking over potholes, and she'd brace herself, praying the trays didn't tip. Passengers would jostle her, some grumbling about the space she took up, others casting curious glances at the food. The air was stifling, hot, thick with the smell of sweat and diesel, and Oni would hold her breath, counting the stops. Sometimes the bus broke down, leaving her stranded on the roadside, the ice in her coolers melting into puddles. Other times, she'd miss her stop, forced to backtrack on foot, her sandals kicking up red dust as she hurried along. She'd arrive at events winded, her neat braid unraveling, her apron creased, but she'd pull herself together, flash a smile, and get to work. That was Oni, tough, relentless, unwilling to let the struggle dim her passion. Her friends saw the toll it took. They'd gather on her porch some evenings, sharing a bottle of Fanta or a plate of leftovers, and watch her slump into a chair, her energy drained. "Oni, this is too much," Uchi would say, her voice laced with concern. Uchi was her closest friend, a hairdresser with a sharp wit and a big heart. "You're killing yourself with these buses. You need a car." Oni would laugh, a tired sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I know," she'd say, leaning back. "I'm saving up. Every kobo I don't spend goes into it." She'd point to a jar on her shelf, half filled with coins and crumpled notes, her car fund, growing slowly but steadily. "One day," she'd add, her gaze drifting to the horizon. A car wasn't just a convenience, it was freedom, a way to ease the grind and build her business bigger. She had no clue how close that day was, or how much it would cost her. It was a sticky Thursday afternoon when the phone rang. Oni was in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as she rolled dough for a small order of puff-puff. She wiped them, on a rag, leaving white streaks on the fabric, and grabbed the phone. "Hello?" she said, expecting a familiar voice, a regular client maybe, or a friend checking in. Instead, a man's voice came through, deep and measured. "This is Mr. Ease," he said. "I'm calling about a catering job. It's for a private dinner at Chief Ema's residence. Can you take it?" Oni's heart skipped a beat, her fingers tightening around the phone. Chief Ema. The name hit her like a thunderclap. Everyone in Enugu knew Chief Ema, or at least knew of him. He was a giant in the city, a man whose wealth seemed to have no limit. His mansion sat on the edge of town, a fortress of white walls and iron gates, surrounded by tales of luxury and power. People whispered about him in the markets, how he'd risen from nothing, how his businesses spanned coal, real estate, and more, how he threw parties that drew the elite from across the state. Some said he was generous, others hinted at darker dealings, but no one doubted his influence. Catering for him wasn't just a gig, it was a chance to step into a world Oni had only glimpsed from afar, a shot at proving herself to people who mattered. "Yes, sir," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside. "I can do it. When is it?" "Saturday evening," Mr. Ez replied. "It's a small group, about 20 guests, but Chief expects top quality. Can you manage that?" Oni nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Absolutely," she said. "I'll make it perfect. What kind of food does he want?" "Something impressive," Mr. Ez said. "Local dishes, well executed. You've got a good reputation. I trust you'll deliver." The call ended, and Oni stood there, staring at the phone, a slow grin spreading across her face. This was it, a break she hadn't dared dream of. She couldn't afford to mess it up. She spent the next hour pacing her kitchen, planning. The menu had to be flawless, a showcase of her best work. She grabbed a scrap of paper and a stubby pencil, jotting down ideas. Pepper soup to start, spicy, rich with goat meat, the kind that warmed you from the inside out. Jollof rice, of course, vibrant orange, smoky from the firewood she'd use, with just enough heat to linger on the tongue. Pounded yam with a goosey stew, thick with spinach and melon seeds, a dish that screamed comfort. Fried plantains for a sweet crunch, meat pies with flaky pastry and spiced beef filling, and a bowl of fruit salad, pineapple, mango, pawpaw, to lighten the spread. It was ambitious, a feast fit for a chief, but Oni thrived on ambition. She wanted them talking about her food long after the plates were cleared. Friday was all about preparation. She woke before the roosters, slipping into a faded wrapper and tying a scarf around her head. Her purse was stuffed with naira, carefully counted from her savings, and she headed to the market. It was chaos when she arrived, the air thick, with the smell of fish and the sound of traders calling out, "Fresh tomatoes here. Buy my yam, fine quality." Oni moved through it all with purpose, her eyes scanning for the best. She picked plump peppers, firm yams, fish still glistening, from the river. "How much?" she'd ask, holding up a bunch of ugu leaves, her tone friendly but firm. She bargained hard, stretching every coin without cutting corners. By noon her arms were full, and she flagged down an okada, balancing her haul as the driver sped her, home through the dusty streets. Back in the kitchen, she got to work. The stove flared to life, and the hours melted away, chopping, stirring, grinding. She roasted peppers until they smoked, pounded yam until her arms ached, simmered stew until the flavors melded just right. The air filled with a symphony of scents, garlic, ginger, curry, fish, and neighbors peeked through her window, drawn by the aroma. "Oni, you're cooking a storm!" one shouted, laughing. "Big job tomorrow," she called back, not breaking her rhythm. By midnight, she'd finished. Trays lined up on every surface, coolers packed with ice and drinks, bags stuffed with utensils. She sank onto her bed, too wired to sleep, her mind racing with what lay ahead. This was her moment. Saturday dawned hot and bright. Oni was up early, double-checking everything. The order was too big for a bus. 20 guests meant trays stacked high, coolers brimming, and no room for error. She couldn't risk a spill or a delay, not for Chief Ema. She dug into her car fund, pulling out enough to hire a taxi, and called Chidi, a driver she'd used before. He pulled up in a battered blue sedan, its paint chipped, its engine coughing as it idled. "You're going far," he said, eyeing the load as Oni piled trays into the back. "Chief Ema's place?" "Yes," she said, sliding into the front, seat with a cooler on her lap. "Let's move fast." Chidi grunted, shifting into gear, but fast wasn't in the plan. The drive was a slog. 15 minutes in, Chidi stopped at a fuel station, muttering about prices as he filled the tank. Oni sat silently, her fingers tracing the cooler's edge, her mind on the ice inside. Would it hold? They hit the road again, only to slow at a checkpoint. 2 officers waved them down, their uniforms faded, their faces stern. "Where to?" one asked, peering into the back. "Catering for Chief Ema," Oni said, her voice calm. He nodded, but they checked her bags anyway, poking at the trays as if expecting contraband. Cleared, they rolled on, but it happened again, twice more, each stop chewing up minutes. The road turned rough as they left the city, potholes jarring the car, and Oni winced, hearing the trays shift. "Careful," she said softly, more to herself than Chidi. By the time they reached Chief's gates, the sun was sinking, and Oni was a mess, sweat soaking her blouse, her braid loose, her energy sapped. She paid Chidi, unloaded her gear, and stood there, staring at the mansion. It was time. The gates swung open, revealing a driveway lined with palm trees, their leaves rustling in the evening breeze. The mansion loomed ahead, white walls gleaming, windows glowing with warm light, a roof that stretched wide like a crown. Oni stepped inside, her arms full, and a staffer led her to the dining hall. It was stunning. Polished wood floors, a chandelier dripping with crystals, a long table draped in white cloth. Guests were already there, about 20 of them. Men in embroidered agbadas, women in jeel head wraps and shimmering dresses, their voices a low buzz of conversation. Oni sat up quickly, arranging her dishes with care. The pepper soup went first, steam curling up from the bowls, followed by the jollof rice, its rich orange hue catching the light. The pounded yam sat in neat mounds beside the egusi stew. The plantains gleamed golden, and the meat pies formed a perfect row. She stepped, back smoothing her apron ready to serve. The night unfolded like a dream. Guests filled their plates, and the room filled with praise. "This soup is incredible," a woman said, sipping slowly, her eyes closing in delight. "Who made this jollof?" a man asked, piling more onto his plate. "It's the best I've tasted," another added, nodding at Oni. She stayed in the background, clearing empty bowls, refilling trays, her smile quiet but genuine. Their words washed over her, easing the ache in her legs, the tension in her shoulders. She'd done it. They loved it. Chief appeared later, a tall man in a flowing robe, his presence silencing the chatter for a moment. He sampled a meat pie, chewing thoughtfully, then looked at Oni. "You've done well," he said, his voice deep and warm. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her heart swelling. It was a victory, proof her struggle had paid off. As the evening wound down, Oni packed up, stacking trays in a corner. The guests left, their voices fading into the night, leaving behind empty plates and glowing reviews. She stepped outside to wait for her taxi, the cool air a balm after hours of heat. That's when Chief approached. "You impressed me tonight," he said, standing beside her, his hands behind his back. "Thank you, sir," she said again, meeting his gaze. He smiled, a rare softness breaking through his stern features. "But I saw how you got here, worn out, carrying all that. It's not right for someone with your skill." Oni paused, unsure what to say. He'd noticed her arrival, flustered and sweaty, and it hadn't slipped past him. "You need a better way to travel," he said. "I'm saving for a car," she admitted, her voice low. He nodded, then pointed to a sleek garage nearby. "Come with me," he said. They walked over, and Chief gestured to a black SUV parked among a fleet of cars. Shiny, sedans, sporty coupes, models Oni couldn't name. "This one," he said. "I hardly drive it. Take it." Oni's jaw dropped, her eyes locking on the vehicle. It was pristine, dark paint gleaming, tires spotless, a car she'd never have dared dream of. "Sir, this is too much," she stammered, shaking her head. He waved her off. "I've got more than I need," Keep it, or it sits here collecting dust." His tone was firm, kind, leaving no room for debate. Oni's knees buckled, gratitude flooding her. "Thank you, sir," she said, dropping to the ground. "May God bless you forever." He chuckled, lifting her up. "Drive it home," he said. "It's yours now." Oni climbed into the SUV, her hands trembling as they brushed the leather wheel. The key turned, and the engine purred, smooth and strong. She drove home slowly, the city lights streaking past, her mind spinning. This was real. She had a car, a gift from Chief Ema himself. When she pulled into her compound, her friends were there, lounging on her porch with bottles of malt. Uchi leapt up, staring. "Oni, is that yours?" she asked, circling the SUV. "Yes," Oni said, stepping out, still dazed. "Chief gave it to me." Gasps erupted, voices overlapping. "No way! You're serious?" Oni nodded, and they crowded around, touching the car like it was a treasure. For days, Oni couldn't stop marveling at it. She'd wake up and peek out her window, smiling at the SUV in her yard. She'd run her fingers along its hood, sit inside just to feel the seats, grinning at her luck. Her friends teased her, "Madam Driver," but they were thrilled. The car changed everything. No more buses, no more sore arms. Business would grow, deliveries would be smoother. A week later, a big order came, an event in a nearby town. Oni loaded the SUV, humming. This was her chance to test her new freedom. The drive started smoothly. The SUV glided over rough roads, the trays secure in the back. Oni smiled, the radio off, enjoying the quiet. But on a lonely stretch, the radio flickered on, static, then a whisper. 12 Okpara Lane. She frowned, tapping it, but the voice repeated, low and eerie. She shook it off. Too many late nights, she thought. Then the car jolted, her heart jumping as the wheel stiffened. It stopped dead. Her phone rang, her client, annoyed. "Where are you?" Oni looked up. 12. Okapara Lane. A chill hit her. She'd never been here, yet the car had stopped right at this address. Curious, she approached a neat house nearby, knocking softly. A young man answered, smiling until he saw the SUV. "You drove that?" he asked, fear in his eyes. "Yes," Oni said, puzzled. "Stay away," he snapped, slamming the door. Stunned, Oni returned to the car, her phone ringing again. A voice, not her client's, said, "Run." Panic surged. She sped to the event, faced an angry client, and decided to return the car to Chief. But worms crawled from the seats, swarming her. Screaming, she stopped, only to find nothing there. The car drove itself back to 12 Okapara Lane, revealing a blood-stained scarf. Oni sought Baba J, learning of Chinelo's disappearance tied to the car. Chief's wife, Lady Eforma, seemed an ally, but the truth emerged. She'd killed Chinelo, her swapped child, out of jealousy. With help from a past kindness, Oni exposed her bringing justice. The SUV fell silent, Chinelo at peace. Oni's old act of kindness saved her, proving good echoes back. Truth prevailed, greed crumbled. Thanks for joining this journey. Subscribe for more.